Hi, my name is Vin Maru, and I'm from Financial Liberties. And today's guest is Brent LaMar from Expat Insurance. I met Brett a couple of years ago down in Puerto Vallarta and got to know him. And he does health insurance for expats, mostly focused on the Mexican market, but I imagine you can do other markets as well. And I've heard many great feedback from a lot of people with his service that he provides and his knowledge in the health insurance industry for expats that are looking to buy health insurance in Mexico, whether it's in Mexico or abroad. And so I asked Brett to come on to this webinar, kind of like an interview question and answer, to learn about the products and services his firm offers and how it can help expats with their health insurance needs while they're living in Mexico or abroad. So thank you, Brett, for coming on to this webinar, and take a few minutes, introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and then we'll kind of get right into it.
Of course. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, Vin, for inviting me on your platform here. You're doing a great job building your community, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And again, thank you for the invitation. And thanks to everyone out there for taking time out of your Friday evening. And this is going to be recorded. So for those that didn't get to join, you can spread this, share this with your friends. Make sure you like and comment in the video so it gains a little more traction throughout the algorithms. And a little bit about me. First of all, my name is Brett LaMar. I'm a U.S. citizen. I've been an expat living in Mexico for about 10 years now. Although Mexico was not my first time spent abroad, I also spent about 3 years in Southeast Asia living as an expat as well. A little bit about my background. I'm a former United States Marine, and I was an entrepreneur in the United States for about 20 years, running my own companies there. It was about time to where I wanted to do an exit and fully move abroad. So I sold my companies in the United States and moved to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico with my wonderful wife, Brooke. And we moved there about 10 years ago. And we took a break for, a few years, just getting our feet wet in Puerto Vallarta and seeing how things would move to the next chapter in our lives. And after a few years, started getting a little stir crazy. I'm a alpha type personality. I like to go out there and be busy, communicating, socializing, and just keeping busy. And there was not enough golf and beach that could fill my cup. I needed a lot more in my life. So I decided to go back to the United States and get my insurance license. So I'm a licensed broker. My residence license is in the state of Texas, but I'm also have non-resident license in Connecticut and in California as well. And came back to Mexico with my license and got contracted with Expat Insurance, who is my MGA. So I've been working with them now a little over 5 years, about 5.5 years. I've been doing expat focused health insurance and life insurance. My main market is Mexico, Latin America, just because that's where I live, but we're able to provide insurance for anyone that is living outside their country of passport anywhere in the world. So, I have clients in Southeast Asia, I have clients in Europe, I have clients in Mexico, all over Latin and South America and the Caribbean. So we can pretty much provide services to anyone that is living outside their country of passport or traveling outside their country of passport. So the market is as big as it wants to be, but I try to focus it here in Latin America. So right now I've been doing that for 5.5 years, and I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into what we offer, the types of insurances, the differences between international versus national insurance, private hospitals versus public hospitals, what happens when you get to a hospital. So those are the main topics that we want to hit this evening. And then we'll do some Q&A. Hopefully the audience has some questions that we could field as well.
Sure. Now you mentioned being able to do insurance for anyone that's outside of their passport nationality. So you can do insurance for Canadians, Europeans, globally, essentially, is as long as they're not getting coverage in their existing country and they want coverage abroad.
Correct. Since I am licensed in the United States, I could sell private health insurance to U.S. citizens, but that's just not my focus. I focus on international insurance. But just like you said, the majority of our clients are U.S., Canadian, EU, and UK citizens.
Okay, great. So let's get into it. Then you wanted to discuss the differences between the two. I guess I think you mentioned it was your private insurance versus public.
Well, let's just start with the different types of insurance that we offer.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the most popular, which is people that are expatriating from their country and moving abroad. So that would be annual major medical coverage. So annual major medical coverage is going to take care of all of your inpatient and outpatient care. So anything that you're going to get admitted to the hospital for, whether it be a pre-approved medical procedure or an emergency. And then outpatient care, which would be follow-up care, outpatient surgeries, cancer care, chronic care. So that's the annual policies that we offer. We contract with numerous companies, hundreds of different policies. So we don't push one product. We're not a captive agency. We screen every client that comes into us, get a little bit of background about what their finances are, what they can afford, how much coverage they're looking for, what's important to them in a policy. And then we usually provide them with about 3 different options that they can then go over and discuss amongst themselves, their friends, their spouse, and then come back to me with any questions, and we narrow it down to the policy that fits right for them. So that would be your annual major medical insurance. And with your annual major medical insurance, you're going to have to fill out an application. If you're over the age of 65, you're going to have to do what's called an attending physician statement, which is blood labs, EKG. For females, it could also include like a mammogram and a pap smear and bone density. But they're going to want to find out about your medical history, because the medical history is underwritten. So pre-existing conditions need to be disclosed. And then the insurance companies will analyze the risk and then make you an offer of insurance. So those are the kind of steps that you need to go through when you're going down the path of finding annual coverage.
Okay.
The next type of coverage that we offer would be short-term coverage. Short-term is classified as anything less than 6 months at a time. So this is your snowbirds. This is your people that just come down for 2 months, 3 months, maximum of 6 months per year. And they don't want to go through all that medical history or anything that's involved in that annual type process. These types of policies are purchased on the go. Like you literally can purchase these policies the day before your departure date. We offer policies that are unique to Canadians. We offer policies that are unique to US citizens, and then policies to anyone that is also living abroad. We also offer short-term travel medical to US citizens or Canadian citizens or Mexican citizens that are looking to go to the United States. Now, as a US citizen, the only way that you can purchase short-term insurance to go back to the United States is if you have residency in Mexico or another country, because you can't buy short-term emergency medical insurance in your country of passport unless you have residency elsewhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
With the short-term medical, you don't need to disclose your medical history. However, majority of short-term emergency medical policies will exclude pre-existing conditions, or they will provide coverage for the acute onset of a pre-existing condition. Now, with US citizens, we have a different type of short-term emergency medical policy to where we can get pre-existing conditions covered as long as they're enrolled in Medicare, or if they have a primary health insurance policy in the United States. And this is only for short-term emergency medical for US citizens. But if you're Canadian, if you're a UK or from Europe, the pre-existing conditions will be excluded, or there will only be coverage for the acute onset of a pre-existing condition. Do you need me to go into the detail on the acute onset, or what is a pre-existing condition?
Well, I think it might help. I think people will know what a pre-existing condition is, but in terms of disclosure that's required to your firm, do you have to provide existing medical records from your medical doctor or of these preconditions, or what kind of records and documentation are required for a policy that's going to be set up for a new insurer?
So, for example, on the annual policies, like I had said, for the 65 plus, they're already going to be required to submit current medical upfront with the application. For a male, that's usually EKG and blood labs. For a female, it can be as little as EKG and blood labs, but some insurers require from a female mammogram, pap smear, and bone density. So that's on the annual. So that's upfront with the application. Now on the annual, there's going to be about 18 medical questions that the insurer is going to ask on the application form. If you answer yes to any of those medical questions, that can open you up to more disclosure that they're going to ask for, which could be those records. Okay. Right. Or like, let's say, for example, you're on cholesterol medication, or you're on blood pressure medication. It's going to trigger what's called a cardiovascular questionnaire, which even if you're under 65 and you're on those types of medications, then you're going to have to submit blood labs and an EKG current. If, for example, you had cancer and now you're in remission and you're cancer free, you're going to have to show those records that you are now cancer free and what was the treatment done. Right. So yes, you will be asked for medical disclosure if you have pre-existing conditions. A lot of people I ask, do you have any pre-existing conditions? And they say no. And then I do a follow-up and I say, well, are you on any prescribed medications? Well, yeah, I take cholesterol medication, but my cholesterol is perfect. Well, your cholesterol is perfect because you're on medication. Right. So you still have that pre-existing condition. Same thing with diabetes, same thing with blood pressure. If you're taking a medication to control a condition, it's still a pre-existing condition, even though it's controlled. So that's just a big misconception that many people don't understand.
So on someone under 65 has to provide the disclosure in terms of the questionnaires you ask, but they don't really necessarily have to provide their, well, I mean, if there is something, then they provide the existing medical records. But up until then, it's just them saying yes or no on this questionnaire.
Yeah. I mean, the best client is somebody that comes to me and says, I'm on no medications. My height and weight is with normal BMI ranges, and I have no pre-existing conditions. That's called a standard issue policy, and it's usually approved within 24 hours.
Okay, great.
Now, with the short-term emergency medical, there's 0 medical questions asked, and there's 0 medical records that are needed to be provided to purchase that. Right. The underwriting for those policies are done at the time of claim. So that's why with the short-term emergency medical policies, it's highly likely that you will need to pay for all of your medical expenses up front and
Okay.
then file a claim for reimbursement, because it's during that claim process is where they're going to do that medical investigation to see if you had any pre-existing conditions.
And if someone did get this short term and did have a pre-existing condition, and the whole purpose of maybe the trip was to try to get medical coverage back home, it wouldn't be covered, is kind of what you're
Yeah.
saying?
For example, you would never buy short-term emergency medical or annual medical to have your condition treated on your vacation.
Right.
It's yeah, so that would not happen. That's why I'm very upfront when I sell any short-term emergency medical policies. I clearly put in there that it excludes pre-existing conditions, or if it includes the acute onset of a pre-existing condition, then that statement will be in there. But like I said, for the US citizens that have a primary health insurance policy in the United States, or if they're enrolled in Medicare, we have a policy that will include all pre-existing conditions. And with that policy, many hospitals will accept that for direct pay.
Okay, great.
Direct pay means that the only thing that they pay is the deductible, and then the hospital bills the insurance company for the balance.
Okay. So maybe we could go into like the scenario of someone who's looking at an annual policy, is moving to Mexico permanently, has given up, like I'm from Canada and I've been outside of Canada longer than 6 months, so I don't get medical coverage anymore there. What kind of things would I expect in terms of being in Mexico? I guess the pros and cons of getting an insurance policy through a firm like yours versus the national Mexican medical coverage that they have here. I mean, I guess there's going to be a cost to yours and there's a cost to theirs. So I'm trying to figure out, the advantages and disadvantages for someone who's moving permanently away from their home, a country of permanent residence, their passport, but moving permanently to a new country. Why consider this private policy versus what the national policy of that country could offer for free or at a very subsidized cost?
Okay, so we're jumping the gun, but I'm happy to dive into this.
Well, if you've got, yeah,
Let's go ahead and go into that.
sure.
And then we'll get back to the other type of insurance, which was medical evacuation.
Okay.
So we have a few different topics that you hit there. Let's first start with private versus public. So specifically to Mexico, since this is where we both are right now,
Sure.
you have private hospitals and then you have public hospitals. The biggest public hospital organization that exists in Mexico is IMSS, IMSS. Your private hospitals are going to be your privately owned corporate hospitals that are very similar to a private hospital from the United States or a private hospital in Canada, to where you're going to have a very Western style treatment and facilities offered to you. For example, rooms. Private hospital is going to be a private room. Public hospital with IMSS, you're not going to have a private room. You're going to be in a room with 6, 8 other people with just curtains. Private hospital, you're going to have an attending nurse that is going to be able to change bedpans, that's going to be able to bathe you, that's going to be able to assist you to and from the bathroom. They're coming in the room many times throughout the day to check on you. Public hospital, IMSS, you're going to need a family member or a friend or a hired caregiver to come in to bathe you, to assist you to and from, to bring you food, because there's no cafeteria. to where in the private hospital, you're going to have a nutritionalist and a diet plan while you're in the hospital. Those are the three biggest things. Also, in the private room in a private hospital, you're going to have a TV, you're going to have Wi-Fi. You're not going to have that in a public hospital. Another difference is the private hospitals are stocked with supplies. If you need a heart stent, they're on hand. To where if you need a heart stent in a public hospital, EAMS, it may take time for them to order it. If you need a hip implant, it's going to take time for that hip implant to get ordered. Surgeries in a private hospital are immediate. You can schedule a surgery within a day, 2 days. Surgeries within a public hospital in EAMS could be months. And what you consider an emergency, or what a private hospital can consider an emergency, a public hospital doesn't put it up on the emergency list as a priority as you would think. So you're going to have to wait quite a while to get in there for what could be dire situations sometimes. I always say to my clients, the Mexicans that are living in Mexico, if they can afford private insurance, they will buy private insurance because they want to be at a private hospital versus a public hospital 10 times out of 10. If they had a choice, they'd choose the private. The only way that they're going to the public hospital is because they truly can't afford private insurance. Okay. So if you can afford private insurance, by all means get it, because your level of care is going to be tenfold. But by all means, if you can't afford it and the only option you have is EAMS, then by all means, it's available there for you. But they do have a list of pre-existing conditions that could exclude you from applying for that service.
Right. And even with that, from my research on it, I think you have to actually go get registered with them. And it's specific to a hospital that's close to you. Is that the case? Or do you get national coverage? With
you have a for if you're enrolled in EAMS and you have an emergency, you have you could go to any EAMS hospital in Mexico if you have an emergency, but you will have a designated EAMS assigned to you that's close to your residence that you register with EAMS. And that is where you would go for any follow-up care, routine care, fill prescriptions or anything like that. That would all be at your designated EAMS hospital.
Right.
And it's what I always recommend is that people that are going to enroll in EAMS speak to nationals, speak to other expats that have actually had an emergency or had a major surgery that they needed. Not routine care, not just, oh, I had a cold and I just needed to go get some medication. You know, like when you really need that service, speak to the people that really needed it. And that's where you should be making your decision off of. Right. Because it's going to be pretty night and day between those two topics. And I'm not trying to scare people into private insurance. I'm just saying you really need to take the time to speak to the nationals, speak to your other expats that have used it, and make the best decision for you going forward.
Okay. Did you want to go back into evacuation?
Since we're on kind of like the public versus private, let's go ahead and talk on the different types of you have international insurance, which is what I focus on in the private sector, and then you have national private insurance as well. So national private insurance is sold through Mexican brokerages. The only legal way for a Mexican private policy to be sold is through a Mexican broker that administers your policy. I can quote Mexican policies because we have Mexicans that work at our firm that will administer those policies. So I can quote them, but you won't be dealing with me when it comes to like claims and when it comes to renewing your policy. I would just literally provide you quotes, and then if you're happy with them, I'd pass you on to one of our Mexican brokers. Because to legally sell Mexican private insurance in Mexico, you have to be a Mexican national or have your Mexican broker's license to do that. I have a US license, and all I focus on is international policies. So the differences between the two of those is, first of all, my policies are offered in English. Their policies are offered in Spanish. My policies are priced in dollars. Their policies are priced in pesos. The other difference is the way your out-of-pocket expenses go. With my policies, it's usually just an annual per person, per policy year deductible. To where with the national policies, it is a deductible and co-insurance per illness or event lifetime. So, for example,
yeah.
So for example, let's say you had an international policy, and you had a heart attack this year, then you fell down and you broke your femur, and 3 months later you need knee replacement. You only pay your deductible. Let's say your deductible is $2,500. You pay $2,500 for the policy year. All three of those events would be covered with that one deductible, and the insurance company is responsible for the balance. Okay. Whereas with a national policy, you would have had to pay 3 deductibles and 3 co-insurances because they were all different illnesses or events. So you would have to pay that deductible and co-insurance 3 times in that policy year. Now, if you had a problem with that same knee, or if you had a problem with that same broken femur, or if you had a problem with, what was the other issue? I said, was it a heart attack? If you had another heart attack, all 3 of those deductibles and co-insurances would have been taken care of for lifetime. So if you ever had a reoccurrence of those anymore in the policy, you won't have to pay a deductible and co-insurance again. But if you have
national or international,
on the national.
Okay. So you would have to pay it for that one instance, the deductible for, let's say, the knee and then the hip and then the heart attack. But going forward, for any further instances or medical treatment that's required, you're not paying that.
Of a reoccurrence of that condition or illness. You wouldn't have to pay that deductible or co-insurance again. To where
co-insurance, what does that mean exactly?
Co-insurance is an additional out-of-pocket expense that is in addition to the deductible. It's usually a percentage of medical expenses. It could be as low as 10%. It can be as high as 50%. It just reduces your premium because it's more responsibility that you're putting on yourself to pay rather than the insurance company. Usually the co-insurance will have a cap of, say, 40,000 pesos. So your deductible is 40,000 pesos, which today in US dollars would be around 2,000, right? It's 20 to it. Yeah,
pretty much,
right? Yeah. And then your co-insurance would be, let's say, 10% of medical expenses, but it caps at 40,000 pesos. So your total out of pocket per illness or event would be 80,000 pesos.
Got it. So the co-insurance essentially it's a percentage that you would have to pay up to a certain amount. So that way your overall annual premium payments are trying to get reduced as much as possible.
Correct. Right.
So,
whereas with the international policies, it's easier for clients to plan for worst case scenarios, to where they're like, if I have a medical event, the only thing I owe for medical is my premium and my deductible. That's it. To
Right.
whereas with a national policy, you have no clue. You can't plan for medical events or emergencies. So you don't know if you're going to have one, none, or four, or three. So it's difficult to plan for those unexpected medical expenses, not knowing the future.
Right. And in that, I mean, it sounds like with the national insurance coverage, I mean, you're paying by the instance, but are you paying out of pocket initially for the service required and then you have to get reimbursed? Because that seems to be a contention on a lot of the Facebook forums, is that some people had to, needed a coverage. They went to the hospital, they were asked to pay for it up front, and then trying to get that money back from the insurance company was a bit of a nightmare, which is a lot of some of the feedback I've seen where I know with your service, you get on top of it right away. And I guess that's because it's the international policy that you focus on and
Yeah,
you're able to help with it.
yeah, I would say dealing with private insurance, you're dealing with private hospitals. Okay, so they're not governed by anybody but themselves. They're private companies. I always say the best insurance, the best insurance that you can buy is more about the agent rather than the policy, because you really need a good agent to help you facilitate the correct procedures and processes. Because if any steps are missed, it can create delays. And also, you need somebody who's going to continue to follow up with the hospitals, with the administrators, with the insurance companies. So we'll go ahead and jump to how private hospitals treat people with private insurance, because it kind of goes into how, if they're going to direct pay, or is it going to be pay up front or a reimbursement and all that. So with the companies that I work with, they want direct pays on any hospital admissions of over 24 hours or any pre-approved medical procedures. The reason why they need a hospital admission of over 24 hours is because it takes time to facilitate the paperwork to issue the private hospital what's called a guarantee of payment. Although with a pre-approved medical procedure, that means like you get diagnosed with a herniated disc, or you need a hip replacement or a knee replacement, or you need some type of treatment that's not emergency. There's plenty of time for us to do that vetting process to issue the guarantee of payment. So when you check in at the hospital already has that guarantee of payment. And that way they can go ahead and just collect the deductible at the time that you check in to the hospital, and then bill the insurance company for the bounce. But in an emergency situation, any private hospital that you walk into in Mexico specifically is going to, as soon as you're stabilized, or if you're with a party and you're not stable, they're going to ask for a credit card. Even if you have insurance, they're going to ask for a credit card. I kind of like to think of it as like opening a tab at a bar or a restaurant. They want to have something, because you telling them that you have insurance doesn't mean anything, because let's say you go in for a heart attack and you have cardiovascular exclusion on your policy. Well, it's not going to cover that, and they're not going to know that until they speak to the insurance company. So for them to begin treatment to stabilize you, they need some type of a deposit on a credit card. Depending on the severity of what you're being admitted for will determine that amount. And it's specific to each hospital. What you may get at hospital A for a deposit may be different at hospital B, C, D, E, or F. Generally, what I see is from minor things, $1,000, to major things, $5,000, $10,000. A lot of people might say, what if I don't have $10,000 on a credit card? Well, hopefully you have at least five if it's a major, because it will at least start stabilizing you until they can start verifying the insurance. So then what's going to happen is, hopefully, I've been WhatsApped or called as well. So I'm kind of involved in this process because I'm available 7 days a week, 365, 24/7. Best way to contact me is WhatsApp if you're a client. And then you're going to present your insurance information to the hospital. So all the private hospitals have an international billing department. They're going to contact the insurance company and provide them with the admission notes, like kind of what you're being admitted for. And then they're going to send back, it's called a carta de garantía, which is basically a guarantee saying that, yes, this person is covered by this insurance. Okay. Here's what they're not covered for. And this is what their out-of-pocket expenses are, which would be that deductible and or co-insurance. So then the insurance company will issue what's called a guarantee of payment if what you're being treated for was covered underneath the policy. Now, just because the insurance company issues a guarantee of payment does not mean that that hospital will accept it. Hospitals are private. They can change their mind. What they're doing this week may not be doing what they're doing next week. We have enough clients in our firm that we kind of know which hospitals and how they're treating. And if you have this insurance, we should direct you over here. Or if you have this insurance, you should go over here. So we try to navigate the client as best as possible to get them to a hospital that's going to accept a guarantee of payment, because there's nothing worse than thinking that the insurance company is going to pay all this money up front, and then the hospital doesn't accept the guarantee of payment and basically forces the client to pay out of pocket and file a claim for reimbursement. Okay. So those may be those situations that you hear of. And when it becomes a nightmare situation is when those clients don't have an agent representing them and they're trying to work directly with the insurance company. You wouldn't want to be in my shoes. I know all the companies from the CEOs to the claims directors. So I have good relationships with all these people. I go to corporate events with them all the time. So I can get things escalated as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's not even as fast as I want, but always know I'm doing my best and I'm always advocating on the client's best behalf. So that can be those situations to where you hear some of these horror stories on the internet or on the social networks. A lot of the times that you hear these horror stories, it's with travel policies, these short-term emergency medical policies, because like I had said, majority of the time with those travel policies, you do have to pay up front and file a claim for reimbursement. And then you may have had a pre-existing condition for what you got treated for. And then the insurance company is just going to deny the claim because you had a pre-existing condition. So you really need to know your coverage before you get into a situation that you could avoid just by opening up a dialogue with your broker. That's why I never, ever suggest going directly to an insurer, whether that be a short-term, a medevac, or an annual policy, because you're not going to have anyone advocating on your behalf. It costs the exact same amount to buy a policy through me as it does going directly to the insurance company. There's no discount by you going direct. It is the exact same cost. There's no surcharge by going through a broker. Insurance companies typically don't advertise. We're their advertisers. We do all the legwork for them. So they pay us a commission. So our sole earnings is commissions from the insurance companies so that they don't have to advertise. So there is absolutely no surcharge to use a broker. It's just like a travel agent. If you can use a travel agent, use a travel agent, because you don't pay any more for your cruise if you go directly to the cruise line, but you get a lot of benefits if you use a travel agent because they're going to be advocating on your behalf. Same thing with insurance.
Interesting. So I guess you've done a great job, and I'm glad you covered the difference between going direct versus going through an agent like yourself. And if it's the same cost, you're going to act on the customer or the client's behalf more than trying to deal with the actual insurance firm. And you focus on the international policies in terms of what you offer. Now, you mentioned there are national policies specific to Mexico. So if you know you're only in Mexico, you're not really traveling, you're just retired, you can go to a national policy, but now you're dealing with a Mexican national firm. Are those agents at those firms, and let's say you do get an agent that you work with a national policy, are they English speaking as well, or it's kind of a hit and miss and you have to know Spanish to
Many of
navigate?
them are bilingual. Many of them are my colleagues. I like, for example, these international policies that I'm selling. A lot of people always say, well, why do I need an international policy? Why do I need, worldwide coverage that excludes the United States if I'm only in Mexico? Well, first of all, go get some quotes. You're going to see it's pretty much the same price. And you're getting, like, say you do take a trip to Europe. Well, you already are covered. You don't have to buy a travel policy. Say you are a Canadian. Well, now you have a private policy back in Canada. You don't have to adhere to your province's regulations of, oh, I have to spend 4 months a year in my province to maintain my provincial plan.
That's right.
You have a private policy now back in Canada, which is better than the social system. But getting to my point is 95%, I'm probably being conservative with my number here. It's probably even more than 95% of the policies that I sell. It is non-US, Canadian, and European citizens that are buying these policies. Mexicans, Venezuelans, Colombians, Chileans. Those are the majority of the people that are buying these policies that I sell, sold by the Mexican brokers as well. For example, when I go on conventions, I'm usually one of 3 gringos at the conventions because it's all Latin American people at these conventions. So the Mexicans are buying these same policies that you're buying. You're buying the expat style version. They're buying the IPMI version, which is policies that include US coverage, because a lot of the Mexicans and Latin Americans and people from Central and South America, they like to have US coverage built into their policy because they like to go back to the United States to receive a lot of health care. So their policies even end up costing more than yours.
And they also get covered in the country they're from. So if a Mexican national came to you, instead of going to IMMS or IMS, they could go get your international coverage. They're covered in Mexico with private health insurance. And then if they do travel abroad, they're covered wherever they're traveling as well.
Although if they're Mexican, I can't sell to them in Mexico.
So you can't sell them the international plan?
No, I can't sell to a Mexican in Mexico unless they're like a spouse, like a dependent on the policy holder. The actual policy holder is a non-Mexican citizen.
But someone from your firm who is a Mexican national can do the international policy for Mexican nationals.
Correct. We have agents that can do that. So I just pass them off to one of my colleagues.
And you think that's 95% of your business is non-US?
Not mine, because that's not who I market to.
Right.
I'm saying these companies, I'm not allowed to name the companies in any marketing videos that I work for. Not work for, but who I'm contracted with. It's just, we're not supposed to name the companies that we represent in marketing videos. But like, if you privately ask me for a quote, these exact same companies that I'm quoting you with on international policies, 95% plus of the policies that they issue as a whole, as a company, are to Latin American nationals,
Okay.
South American nationals,
Great.
Caribbean nationals. So that's
Wow.
why a lot of people are like, well, I just live in Mexico. I just want a Mexican policy. Well, you're kind of, you could get a lot more for the same price. And then you have that, like I said, that annual deductible rather than a deductible per event and co-insurance per event.
And you
And
mentioned
everything's in English.
yeah, and you mentioned the price is pretty similar for like getting an
Sometimes cheaper, sometimes more, sometimes equal.
yeah.
But average, it's apples to apples on price. The big thing here though is like, Vin, you know, we're at what, hitting 20 right now, 20 to the dollar on US.
Yeah.
What we were just months ago at what, 17?
1630 was the low kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. So just imagine how much your premiums went up when you bought a policy, a Mexican policy at 20, and you're still priced in pesos, but now you're only getting 16 to the dollar. To where again, it's very hard if you're not making pesos and you're converting your US dollars to pesos to pay for a large bill like a premium in an insurance policy and deductibles and co-insurance. Depending on how the economy is, it could be this price this year, it's 25-30% more the next year. You
Right.
know?
So just one quick question going back to if you had to do an emergency visit or have a procedure done, the deductible is paid at the hospital, and then the co-insurance is paid there if you have that with the Mexican national plan. And then beyond that, your coverage is covered the balance of it, as long as
Yeah. I mean, the deductible and the co-insurance would be paid directly to the hospital. They're the ones you would pay that at admission, or admission after you have been stabilized, or if you have a pre-approved procedure, it'd be done at the check-in of the day of your surgery. That's when you would pay the fees. Correct.
okay, yeah. So the deductible is never paid to the broker or the insurance firm itself. It's
No,
always paid.
no premiums, nor deductibles or co-insurance is ever paid to the broker directly.
Right.
Like we can't accept cash or anything like that. Everything is paid via a secure online portal as far as premiums go,
Okay.
or via bank transfer to the insurance company.
Or is credit card an option to make payments on it, or they probably don't prefer
I
that?
would say that 98% of our premiums are paid via credit or debit card. There's a select few that will do bank transfer, and then there's a very, very small percentage of people that still write checks.
And are these premiums paid monthly, quarterly, yearly, or is there an option for either of them, I guess?
Yeah, of course. You know, we have deductibles, all different ranges of deductibles. Of course, the lower the deductible, the higher your premium. The higher your deductible, the lower your premium. And then there's payment frequencies. The typical payment frequencies are annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess one of the questions, I guess, is let's assume someone's got no pre-existing medical conditions. They're interested in your international insurance policy. What do you suggest in terms of the price point on the deductible versus trying to, decrease your yearly payment or the premium payments for the insurance policy? Is there kind of a sweet spot that, you find it works for most people?
Yeah, I would say that the typical deductible that is majority picked by majority of clients is 5,000 US dollars.
Okay.
If, for example, if you're, I'd say 50 and up, it's typically a 5,000 to a $10,000 deductible is what people are picking. If you're 49 and below, it's usually $2,500 is the most standard picked when you're below 49. And that's just because it's getting to the sweet spot with the premium. Going from a $10,000 deductible down to a $2,500 deductible significantly impacts the premium.
It does.
Yeah. And also getting back to those payment frequencies, annual is always going to be the cheapest way to pay. The more frequent you pay, the more it's going to be amortized over the year because you're basically financing the policy. So it's usually annual is the cheapest. And then you go up to semi-annual, which is about 6% more. And then quarterly, which is about 8 to 10% more. And then monthly is about 10 to 12% more. Amortized over the year.
Are you able to give a rough idea of what a policy would cost? Like, let's say someone like myself, 55, no health conditions. I take the $5,000, deductible payment. What can I expect in terms of an annual premium for it versus maybe someone who's younger too? And I know it may vary, but this is just to give someone a price range of what they can expect. And maybe also, what would that cost if someone just went to, well, I mean, you covered the national policy would be roughly the same, but.
Yeah, it's going to be roughly the same. And like I said, I won't have those national numbers in front of me, but my Mexican colleagues and I do a lot of cross-referencing between the policies just to see where we're at each policy year. Because every different insurance company has a different fiscal year. Like some start on the calendar year, some start in April, some start in July. So each insurance company will do their rate increase at a different time. Always the same time each year, but each company has a different time that they release the new rates. But like what age range? What age group are you?
I would just say someone's like our age, 55-ish, and has the $5,000 deductible. What kind of a annual premium am I looking at for the international coverage?
Let's just go somewhere between 50 and 60. Okay. So like for 50-year-old, you're going to be right around $1,600, $1,900 a year, excluding the United States.
Okay.
To where if we get up to 60, anywhere from 3,000 to 3,800. That's mid-range. Now we can go much higher. This is a mid-range comprehensive policy.
And you're saying excluding United States, is there a premium difference for United States citizens?
No, I'm saying it's going to be a worldwide policy, international worldwide policy that excludes coverage in the United States. Now, if you want to include coverage in the United States, smack 100% on that.
Wow. So even as a Canadian, if I wanted an international policy, sure, I'm covered in Mexico, covered maybe even when I go back to Canada, as I have my nationality here, but US coverage is not included.
Correct. Okay. You're going to get the back. Yeah. I mean, for example, I have many clients that have US coverage built into their policies because let's say you have a rare cancer. I'd want access to MD Anderson, maybe. The Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. You have a rare blood disorder. Do you want to have the access to that? Some people move to Mexico and they're very wealthy. They just want a better quality of life. Some people move to Mexico because they don't have a good quality of life in the United States and they are on a pension or a fixed income or something like that. So they can't afford to live in the United States anymore. So they move to Mexico. So we're dealing with clients that they have crazy net worths to where they're just like, give me the Cadillac. I want access to the best anywhere all the time. Sure. And then I get clients that are like, what is the cheapest policy you have that I can get access to a private hospital? So we have the whole range.
And I guess someone who's looking at US coverage, maybe it's just because they happen to do a layover or are vacationing for a week in the US. But even then, I think if you put your travel vacation plans on your credit card, you get some basic medical coverage sometimes with that.
It's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. Sure. Yeah. And it's going to be most likely reimbursement.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but, or someone could I guess in that best scenario, if you know you're going to be in the States for, let's say, a month or two for whatever reason, you can buy a short-term US policy while you still have your international policy. And then for that 2 month period, you can always buy a short-term policy that will cover you in the US itself.
Yeah, like if you have your residency, temporary or permanent residency in Mexico, you then, or if your passport's from a different country other than the US, you can always buy short-term coverage back to the United States.
Yeah, that's pretty good then.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients that do that. They're like, I only go back to visit my family like 2 weeks. Why do I want to have annual US coverage? I just want it. I'm like, well, then just buy a short-term emergency medical policy for that specific time. And we have those policies as well. We're contracted with over like 15 different insurance companies, over 100 different policies.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot. I think do you want to circle back to the flight medical insurance?
Yeah, I think the only topic that we didn't touch is medical evacuation. It used to be very popular when I first started in the business. It's
Okay.
not so much popular anymore just because medical evacuation, there's just so many factors that need to happen to get a medevac approved. First of all, you need to be stabilized. And the evacuation policies don't pay for any of the stabilization. The medical evacuation policies are simply a medical transportation service only. So you would have to still pay for any stabilization to be authorized for transport. So the attending physician that is treating you in the hospital, wherever you are abroad, needs to approve. The receiving hospital to wherever you're going, attending director needs to approve, as well as the medical director of the evacuation service. So there's 3 parties that all need to say green light for that to go. There's evacuations done specifically from Vallarta very, very often. So don't think that they don't happen. They do. They do happen. They do get approved. So don't think by getting 3 people to all give a green light that, oh, there's going to be one person that's going to be like, no, you're not getting it. No, if it's all good to go, you're going to get the transport. But a lot of people are like, I don't have, I sold my house, my kids moved away. I'd have to get a hotel room. I don't really want to go back to the United States or Canada to get treated. I'd prefer just to have my coverage here in Mexico. So we do sell those medical evacuation policies, but you have to know all the ins and outs of it. They're about like I'd say around $500 a year for a medevac policy. So they're pretty inexpensive. A lot of people bundle them with their own policy just to have the option, especially people that are at Medicare age, since they already have private insurance, or the snowbirds from Canada that still maintain their provincial. That they're like, yeah, if I want to go get my hip replaced back there if I fell down or something like that, so they'd be transported back there to get that hip replacement. So it's specific to the individual, but know that you're going to be responsible to pay for any stabilization.
Okay. And which would still kind of get covered under your regular health insurance plan that you had, if you had it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of people go into it thinking all they need is medical evacuation insurance with no other insurance.
Right.
So
And
just know you're going to be out of pocket if you don't. Yeah.
right.
Right.
Now, it's the final thing I'm kind of curious about. You've been in the medical health insurance in specific in Mexico. What kind of feedback are you getting in terms of the medical care that's provided in Mexico versus someone that would want to go back to the US and have their treatments, or back to Canada? I mean, I hear great things, but I've never had to use the medical system here, so I don't really know.
Yeah, well, I've unfortunately been in the medical system as a patient myself. My wife as well, more cosmetically than me. But so I've seen firsthand, by being a patient, the level of care is very equal to as far as like from an equipment standpoint and the technology that they use or that's available to them, the MRI machines, the cath machines, like all these instruments and tools and the stents and all this stuff, very, very similar to what you would get in the United States.
Okay.
Which is usually seen as like, I guess, the superior. What is different is the private rooms that you get are more like hotel suites. They're very comfortable rooms that you're in and put in, and they're all private rooms. So to where even in the United States, I was a patient there and I had some like 70-year-old man behind a curtain in a semi-private room, to where it was just like I had to hear all their conversations, their visitations, all that stuff. Here, you get all private rooms. It's almost like having your own hotel suite. The most important thing that I think is different here in Mexico than the care you get back in the United States or in Canada is the communication that you get with your doctor. You're not dealing with a nurse practitioner. You're not dealing with the doctor's just going to come in and be like, okay, you're good. And I'll see you before checkout. They're there checking up on you regularly.
Yeah.
Follow-up care. They're there checking up on you regularly. When you get discharged, they give you their personal telephone number, WhatsApp, to where you can communicate with them after discharge. Try and ask a doctor in the United States for their home telephone number.
Right.
You're never going to get it. And you're never going to get, like, for example, I go in to see my cardiologist because I have heart disease in my family. So I have a cardiologist that I see on an annual basis. He spends an hour with me. I would go to a cardiologist in the States. I might get 10 minutes,
Right.
after I and then speak to the nurse practitioner, after that. It's the level of care and the bedside manner is a 10 out of 10. I can't stress how different it is being a patient in the private hospitals here from a care perspective.
Interesting. And I know maybe this is a bit of a side topic now, but it's not covered in your health insurance plan, but it seems like medical tourism is a big thing in Mexico. And you mentioned how the quality of care there, I guess someone who had to either get a procedure done in the US versus even if it was out of pocket in Mexico, it might make sense for them to come and do a procedure down here in Mexico on a medical, just kind of doing medical tourism business.
If you're doing medical tourism and you like cosmetically or, a lot of people come down here and get treated for Lyme disease. There's a big Lyme disease center in Puerto Vallarta. A lot of people travel down here to have a lot of dental work done. They travel down here to have bariatric surgery, gastric bypass surgery. Hoya Hospital, that's kind of how they started, was Dr. Hoya is one of the major bariatric doctors, surgeons in Mexico. So if you're paying the non-insurance rate, because there is an insurance rate and cash rate, the cash rates are a fraction of what it would cost in the United States for things. So yeah, there is definitely an industry for that as well.
Yeah, a friend of mine, he's involved with the stem cell clinic here, and he's the one helping the stem cell doctor sell the service. So he brings it, he finds the patients, seems to do very well with it. But I think it's one of those things. It just seems like there is this whole industry for medical tourism that's just booming down here too.
I mean, in the United States and Canada, we have these government regulators in the medical industry to where it takes years of studies for things to get approved, just like stem cell. You can't do stem cell in the United States for a lot of things. I mean, they're allowing you to do it for your hair now to try to regrow your hair. But if you want to like inject it in a joint to, you had a rotator cuff that was maybe like 60-70% torn, rather than getting surgery, get stem cell injections. A lot of people are doing that. For example, I had 2-level disc replacement in the United States, but at the time the FDA only had one level disc replacement approved. So I was on a waiting list for 4 years to get 2-level disc replacement. I was patient number one to have 2-level, but it might be in your best interest to go to more of these looser governments that allow medical advancements to progress quicker, because there isn't a governing body that's holding them back from the advancements. And with AI now, I can't even imagine where medical is going to be in 10 years from now.
I'm hearing a lot of amazing things that are
yeah,
coming. I
yeah,
just did something with Elon Musk and Neuralink, and that he now has the ability to help people who are blind start to see. So he's got it to the level where they can see. It's like an old 80s Nintendo video game type of quality level, but that just keeps continuing to advance. And
or how about Apple and their new AirPods? It's a new hearing aid.
yeah, exactly. So I think it's interesting because I love following trends, and one of the big trends for an investment theme, and that's stuff we cover on Financial Liberties, is trying to
Yeah,
identify trends early enough and then see how to get best invested in that trend. The two big things I see going forward are the change in the fintech world and the introduction of blockchain and all that technology. But then the other side of it is this whole new medical with industry that's coming out with CRISPR technology and genome editing and
oh yeah.
the stuff that's just coming down the pipe. And yeah, I mean, we could be eliminating diseases and cancers within our lifetime. We may see it happen with the tech.
Yep. And maybe one day you'll be able to pay for your bill in Bitcoin.
Well, listen, they can do it. Is there an insurance company that does allow payment for
Not
policies?
yet. Not that I've seen yet. No.
No. I talked
No.
to Active Bear, and they're fully aware that real estate purchases and transactions are now starting to be conducted in Bitcoin. I mean, it's like a fraction of a normal transaction, but the ability to do it now is here. So it's more of real world assets getting tokenized and digitized. So it's a digital asset base that we're moving into. But
Of
um,
course.
I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? Because I think we've covered quite a bit, and we're almost over an hour now. So
Yeah, I think we hit all the major points. Quite a bit of a deep dive. Again, if anybody has any questions, I don't know. I would recommend that you contact Vin, and he can put you in contact with me. And I will be happy to schedule any calls, work on any quotes. It's free. There's no cost to have a phone call. There's no cost to get a quote.
okay.
And I will be happy to spend as much time as you need to make the decision that's right for you.
Perfect. And I mean, given the price of the policy, it seems very reasonable considering, like, as a Canadian, if I went, I give up my residency in Canada, sure, I don't get my medical coverage, but if I can buy a policy that's a couple of $1,000s or so and gives me international coverage, how much do I save on not paying the taxes back in Canada type of thing? So there is a kind of a bit of a good payoff and
Right.
that. So great, Brett. What I'll do is I will, I'll mention your contact info or something in the YouTube video when I actually put it up, or have them contact me and I can forward you their information. But thank you for having me, coming on to the show and sharing your insight into the medical industry. There's a lot of great knowledge in there, and I'm sure people watched it or people are going to watch it in the future when it's on the YouTube channel.
Of
Will
course.
gain some great insight, and I highly recommend, speaking to Brett and speaking to him about your health insurance needs. And you do life insurance too. We never even really touched on life
Yeah,
insurance.
I do life insurance, more so term life insurance. We do offer other products, but term is more popular. But yeah, it is something else that is in our portfolio that we can offer you, and that's term policies, anywhere from 10 to 30-year terms, based upon your age. But
Okay.
we have pretty quick issues on term policies if you have a clean bill of health. Of course, if you have pre-existing conditions, there can be some holdups, but pretty quick issues on those. And the
Sure.
premiums are quite reasonable.
Okay, great. Well, I think the reason why I really wanted you on is because I've known you for a couple of years, but I've heard amazing feedback from people in Vallarta and just various social media platforms, all recommending you. And so, that's why I really wanted you to be on here to
That's
share your information and respect to you for what you're doing for the people that are down here, because there's a lot of people that just don't know how to navigate the health system. They get taken advantage of at times. And these are things, we try to mitigate these risks in life. And if
yeah,
you put the right person kind of in your corner backing you on a policy, then that's the best way to go.
of course. Well, I appreciate the time, Vin. It's
All
been a
right,
good
Brett,
talk.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
You have a great